Peru's presidential election season is in full swing. What are the concerns and expectations of voters as they head to the polls? I'm Elaine Reyes in Washington, D.C., and this is America's Now. First up, some candidates running for Peru's presidency have been disqualified. It sparked confusion among voters in the Andean nation.
Most Peruvian voters have been convinced that everybody's corrupt and that they don't really have a choice. For many Peruvians,
correspondent Dan Collins takes a look at political corruption allegations in Peru. Then she's one of the first female leaders in Latin America, holding Chile's top job, not once, but twice.
So the responsibility is very big to show that women can, to be a role model to other women, and to inspire them so they can aspire to be much more.
CCTV's Rochelle Akufo sits down with Chilean President Michelle Bachelet here in Washington to discuss energy, trade, and education reform. And later, it's a beautiful beach paradise on the Yucatan Peninsula that's so hot, it's cool. And it's drawing travelers in droves.
We were just looking for something nearby, and I think that this just stood out to us as a place that could be different and more of an adventure.
But is development putting in peril the very surroundings that make it a trendy retreat?
Esto es macizo.
Correspondent Jerry Haddon visits the Tony beach town of Tulum to take a look at the effects of tourism on the terrain. Welcome to the show. In recent years, several Latin American countries have been grappling with accusations of political corruption. One of those countries is Peru. As its citizens vote for a new president, we look back on a campaign in which the issue of corruption has loomed large. Correspondent Dan Collins reports from Lima on the candidates and the controversy.
Thousands marched in the Peruvian capital against one presidential candidate. It might not look like it here, but Keiko Fujimori is the front-running candidate for Peru's seat of power. She's a woman, she's just 40 years old, and for her years, a skillful politician. But she's also the daughter of the jailed former president Alberto Fujimori. Fujimori's government in the 1990s saw massive corruption and human rights abuses that included extrajudicial executions and forced sterilizations. In 2009, he was jailed for 25 years for directing death squads, embezzlement, and bribing the press to smear rivals. He's a polarizing figure, inspiring both loyalty and contempt. And his daughter is part of that legacy. So while she polls with a third of the vote, the same polls indicate nearly half of Peruvians say they would never vote for her.
Estamos marchando en contra de la postulación de Keiko Fujimori, que como sabemos es la hija de Alberto Fujimori, uno de los presidentes más corruptos del Perú y del mundo. Y estamos aquí para pedir que se le anule la candidatura porque las nuevas leyes del Jurado Nacional de Elecciones dicen que no puedes dar dinero ni regalos a la gente y lo que ella hace es comprar votos. Entonces ya hay un candidato que lo han sacado y lo han tachado justamente por dar dinero y pedimos que también la tachen a ella porque hace lo mismo.
Millionaire university owner Cesar Acuña was in fourth place until he was expelled, accused of breaking a new law against vote buying when he handed out cash on the campaign trail. Fujimori's party was accused of the same misdeed when cash prizes worth around $89 were awarded at a Valentine's Day breakdancing event. The law bars candidates from giving more than $6 during campaign events. But on the campaign trail, Fujimori defended her party, Fuerza Popular, and blamed the government for the accusation.
Pero quiero decirles efectivamente, lo hacen porque tienen miedo. Quiero dejar bien claro que nosotras nunca hemos cometido una infracción en contra del reglamento o de las normas y las leyes.
In a final ruling, Peru's electoral board said there was no case to answer. prompting accusations of favoritism and bias. One of Fujimori's main rivals and the only other woman in the race, leftist Verónica Mendoza, says it's unfair.
En este momento da la impresión que se están midiendo a los candidatos, ¿no?, de distinta manera, con distinta vara, y eso creo que sí, precariza aún más este proceso, ¿no?, y abona a este sentimiento de incertidumbre y esta crisis de legitimidad.
In March, the Electoral Board banned another candidate from the first round of voting for an error in registering his candidacy. Julio Guzman was the main challenger to Fujimori. The 45-year-old newcomer told CCTV the decision to bar him was arbitrary.
That other three political parties that are participating in the presidential elections commit exactly the same errors, and the electoral authority said, okay, you can participate. You can participate, but Julio Guzman cannot. So that asymmetry, that disproportion in applying the law is also outrageous.
This latest scandal has added a new dimension to an election in which much of the electorate expected little from the familiar faces. In a country where corruption polls as the second highest concern after crime, voters had become jaded. Harvard University political scientist Steve Levitsky told CCTV.
Kind of a perverse dynamic has taken hold in which most Peruvian voters have been convinced that everybody's corrupt, that everybody is corrupt, and that they don't really have a choice, which leads to an incredibly high level of cynicism and leads them to say, well, if everybody's corrupt, I might as well choose the corrupt guy who does stuff, or I might as well choose on other factors, because many Peruvian voters have ceased to believe all candidates. And I think down the road, that's going to have a lot of negative consequences for the quality of Peruvian democracy, maybe even the stability of Peruvian democracy.
Keiko Fujimori has tried hard to shake off the image left by her father's decade-long rule. While capitalizing on his residual popularity, she also distanced herself from what she calls his errors and pledged to combat corruption.
Yo he sufrido y he cargado una mochila muy grande por errores de terceros, por errores de otras personas. Y jamás permitiré que mis hijas carguen la mochila que yo he cargado durante tantos años. Gracias.
But Fujimori is not the only candidate tainted by the past. Two-time former president Alan Garcia is a political heavyweight who was last in office between 2006 and 2011. But the leader of the influential APRA party is mired in allegations of corruption. Made worse, says Levitsky, by allegations he pardoned jailed drug traffickers for cash.
He's got an image as a politician who is cynical and corrupt, and I think he was in trouble to begin with. What the narco-indulto scandal has done and what the label candidate of the narcos has done is reinforce this image that already exists. And I think it's going to kill him politically. I think that it makes it extremely difficult, despite the fact that he's a very talented politician.
Peru's young population is showing that it's sick and tired of business-as-usual politics and politicians and craves someone new. Polling in fifth place, it seems Garcia is yesterday's man. The common Latin American phrase, roba pero hace obra, to describe a politician who steals but at least does something, is no less common, but it might be seen as less acceptable. It's perhaps no coincidence that the anti-graft NGO Transparency International launched a worldwide campaign in Lima. In this predominantly Catholic nation, the location, near a statue of Christ, was significant, said the NGO's chair, Peruvian lawyer Jose Ugas.
We call him the Christ of anti-corruption, and we were inspired by his presence here, and that's why we decided to make this event here, because he expresses what we are trying to say. Stop corruption. And Christ, in his own life, has many examples of how he confronted corruption. And the Pope now has a say in the agenda of anti-corruption in the world. So we wanted to also express that doing this act here. We want to be absolutely outspoken, with a loud voice, and when necessary we will name and shame, because we need the corrupt not to go away with it.
But even the funding for this religious monument is under scrutiny. While Christ may be a symbol for anti-corruption, for many Peruvians, the funding behind this statue is highly questionable. It was paid for by Brazilian engineering firm Odebrecht and the former Peruvian president Alan Garcia. Both the company and the ex-leader are being investigated for corruption. Peruvians have little faith in their politicians, institutions, and even the law. Can that change? Whoever becomes Peru's next president faces an uphill struggle to convince people it can.
The two candidates with the most votes will go on to the second round on June 5th. The winner will replace President Ollanta Humala, whose 5-year term in office ends in July.
Coming up,
a conversation with Chilean President Michelle Bachelet.
Leadership doesn't have to be only one type of leadership. You can have a male leadership, but you can also have a female leadership, and both leadership can be good.
America's Now.
Welcome back. The president of Chile, Peru's neighbor to the south, is no stranger to elections. She's the country's first female president and has been elected to the top post not once, but twice. My colleague Rochelle Akufo sat down with President Michelle Bachelet during the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington, D.C. She gives her insight into Chile's nuclear power program, trade, education, and leadership. Let's take a listen.
Chilean President Michelle Bachelet, a pleasure that you've been able to join us here in Washington, D.C. during the Nuclear Security Summit.
Delighted to be with you here, Rochelle. Thank you so much.
Now, it's only fitting that we start with the topic of energy. Now, Chile imports about 70% of its energy and is one of several Latin American countries that doesn't actually produce nuclear energy, but there are plans coming within the next decade. Tell me, what does having nuclear power mean to Chile?
Well, as a matter of fact, we only have nuclear power for mainly medical use and industrial use. And we have been discussing and analyzing if we need nuclear power for energy production, but we haven't finished the studies yet. We have been doing it with the International Organization of Nuclear Energy through all the different steps, and to decide at the end when we have the last results whether we are going to go that way or not. In the meantime, we have been working much more on renewables because, you know, we have the more driest desert in the world, and so we have a huge power on solar power, wind power, and so on. But anyway, even though we don't have much nuclear power, we do understand that nuclear security is essential. So that's what we have been participating in the 4 summits, and this has been the last in this format. And we have commended President Obama because he has been so clear on the need to ensure nuclear security. And because of this, I mean, Chile is a country who has already adopted and approved all the international norms, conventions, even the more new ones. We are all on that. But, you know, it helped us to start doing our action plan, national action plan, and measures to ensure that nuclear power won't go into the wrong hands for the misuse of nuclear power. So we have been working a lot on security, and we hope that we'll continue doing that so the world can be safer.
And a big part of that is obviously cooperation. And Chile has more free trade agreements than any other country in Latin America. And your country is currently renegotiating a 10-year extension of its FTA with China. How would you describe Chile's relationship when it comes to trade with China over the last decade?
Well, we are the country in the world that has more FTAs, not only Latin America, because we have like 23 or 24 FTA with 63 different countries. And it's like the 80% of the GDP of the world. So this is because we are not a huge country. So we cannot depend only on internal demand and internal market. So we understood that development and growth for Chile was linked to how we could trade with the rest of the world. And we have had and I had the opportunity during my first government to sign the agreement with China, and that has been negotiated on before, but so it was put into force during my first government, and it has worked very well. But it was mainly trade on certain types of goods, and now we are thinking on expanding it on other kinds of things like services, tourism, and other areas. So we believe there's a lot of opportunities because it has been very good for Chile and for China. And we have had already a couple of meetings with our teams, and I hope we'll have in this first semester another meeting. We're advancing and progressing, and I hope we will then be able to have an improved, more modern FTA that will provide more opportunities for Chinese and Chilean people.
And you mentioned tourism being one of the areas that you're looking at. Are there any other areas that you're looking at renegotiating at the table right now?
Well, it's it's about it's services among countries, and that we're discussing which are the other areas that could be included.
Now, also, one of your priorities when you took office in 2014 was education reform, and especially ways to try and make that free. And you've made several steps to try and make that a possibility, but there has been some resistance. Why do you think it's been met with resistance in Chile?
Well, you know what happens? Because what we have done, first of all, I mean, everybody was positive on a reform that would ensure quality of education for everyone. Everybody would like to pay less for education, and of course, if it's free, much better. But I think that people who were, but we said, we have a system in Chile where we have public system that receives money from the state, private subsidized system who receives money from the state for the vulnerable people, and private who doesn't receive any subsidy. So we said we need to continue in this situation, but the private schools who receive subsidy from the state cannot use that subsidy for profit, because the money that we give to those schools is to improve the education for those children who are vulnerable. So we said, look, we are giving you the money to improve the quality of education. So use it in that. So if you want to continue using it in the future, you need first to ensure quality of education. You cannot segregate, exclude students because of gender or because of ethnic group, etc. And we need to, and also we need to ensure that families will select the school according to what they want the educational model the children to receive. So we passed a law, but there are some people who didn't like this situation, so they started campaigning, saying to the families that we are going to impose a certain school, they won't be able to choose. That was not true at all. So people get confused, they didn't understand exactly the meaning of the reform. But on the concrete, what has happened and started this year, 260,000 children are going to these schools, the same school they were going before, this private subsidized, but they don't have to co-pay anymore. Those families that before they have to make a co-payment, they don't do it because the state is giving that money for the school so they can continue improving the quality of education. Almost 160,000 students will go to the tertiary education without have to pay anything, free of charge. So those families will, we're talking about vulnerable families that many times either the children would not be able to go to tertiary education, or they have to get terrible debts. So, and I know in the U.S. this is a discussion many times with people at the universities, because they get terrible debt that afterwards they're very difficult for them to be able to pay. So we are going in the direction, if I may say, that education in Chile, we want it to be a social good, a social right, that it won't depend on the family, their income, the place in Chile where they live, that if they are able or not to receive quality education. We want quality education for everyone. First of all, because education is what opens opportunities, doors. Second, because our country cannot lose any talent. And we want every talented people to be able to, achieve these opportunities. So we are so enthusiastic about this because we believe in this way. On one hand, we're fighting inequalities that exist in our country still, but on the other hand, we are giving more opportunities to the economy because we will have people better trained, all their talents contributing to the development of our society and economy. So I think really it's a win-win thing. So I think that people, when they are going to see the results, they will realize that this is what they really needed.
So it does sound like you're really trying to level the playing field. And
completely, completely.
And there can be those tensions with any new reform that comes in.
Oh, it does, yes.
And what do you think would be perhaps the biggest challenges to making education free in Chile?
Well, I mean, the challenges that we have is, of course, the economy is not in the best moment because, as we mentioned before, China is one of the biggest partners. Copper was one of the biggest products that we traded, and because the economy in China has slowed down a little bit, of course, the demand on copper has been lower than before, and that has affected our incomes. So the economy is going a little bit slower because of the external factors, not only China, other factors too. And the region is going through a slowdown, but we're not in recession, our economy is lower than we would like. So that means that we don't have the same incomes that we have 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. But that doesn't mean we're not going to get into our goal, that is education free of charge for all. For all that will meet the requirements that we will give to those universities on quality. It's not only about gratuity, it's also about quality because, free of charge and bad, nobody wants it. Bad quality, nobody wants it. So we are going to do it gradually, as we always do things in Chile. We start doing it gradually as the possibility that the economy give us more resources. We will be expanding the universe of students that will receive gratuity.
Now, educational reform isn't the only way that you've pioneered. You're also Chile's first female president, first elected in 2006 and then again in 2014. And you've also held several ministerial positions as well, including the UN Women Organization. So that's so many achievements. Now, along that road, what are some of the challenges that came about with you being Chile's first female president?
Well, I became Chile's first president I always said well, first of all, people knew me because I was firstly appointed Minister of Health, and I had a very tough task, and so everybody knew me. I was supposed to resign if I didn't meet some goals at 3 months, so everybody knew me, and I worked very hard and so on. But afterwards, the president appointed me Minister of Defense. That was the first female Minister of Defense in Chile, but the 5th in the world, because truly there are some areas that are more male-dominated than female-dominated. So of course I became very famous, and why I'm mentioning this, because I think there's so many fantastic women, but nobody visibilized them. They don't have the chance to be known, and so many times they don't have the opportunity to be in those decision-making positions where they should be, and they could be contributing a lot. So the challenges at the beginning was that when you start something new in anything, but female, but also anybody that tries to start something new, you will confront a lot of prejudices. And with women in particular, in our societies, and I don't know if in the US, but maybe, I think in many societies, because even talking to European parliamentarians, they will tell me the same. You sort of need to show that you're capable. In men, that's taken for granted. They're supposed to be capable and competent. Women have to show that they're competent, and that's also, of course, and you have to deal with a lot of prejudices. If a man has a strong feeling, or pain for something, he will be a very sensitive man. If a woman is very strong, she will be hysterical sometimes. So there's a lot of prejudices, but that's old story. That was at the beginning, and then people started realizing that leadership doesn't have to be only one type of leadership. You can have a male leadership, but you can also have a female leadership, and both leadership can be good. And even though, studies through the crisis have shown that there's a lot of attributes of female leadership that are very positive for the performance on companies and on other things, because this is what is so-called soft power. I don't know if it's soft, but they call it soft power. That is very positive in many situations. So I would say every woman who starts something new will confront a lot of prejudices, and you need to show that you're capable and competent. And it's not easy sometimes, but because not only men, but also some women don't believe in women's capacities. But I have to tell you, at the end, it's very positive, because not only you can work very well, but there are so many other women who are inspired, who dare, you know, to think that it is possible. And many women feel that the world is better because men and women are well represented. And that's what I look after. And it's not only about women, it's about a world that represents in a good way men and women, their experiences, their talents, and their contributions.
And Madam President, I do want to ask, I know that empowering women has been a cause that's close to your heart. What does it mean for you to be a role model to both girls and women, to see you in a position of power like this?
Well, it's a responsibility, a huge responsibility. I remember, you know, when I first came to office, and you know, on the opening, in the inauguration, there were so many women, and many said, well, you inspire us, and now we aspire to be like that. But some other told me, I know, you know what happens with women, that if a man doesn't do a good government, it's a problem. But it's a problem of some person. But if a woman doesn't do it, it's because women cannot do it. So the responsibility is very big to show that women can, to be a role model to other women, and to inspire them so they can aspire to be much more. And it's interesting because, but this is not an easy way, and you have to work very strongly because, you know, 2 years ago when I became president for the second time, there was a woman president of the Senate in our country. The biggest trade union in our country was led, it is still led by a woman. Two big student federations were led by women. So somebody would say, oh, Chile is the paradise for women. No, but still we have a lot of work to do to ensure same salary and no salary gaps, to ensure that women has nurseries and kindergartens so they can work and have their children with well care conditions, and that there are homework that are shared by men and women. So we have advanced a lot, but we need much more to do in Chile and in the world. And I'll continue contributing to that.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much, Chilean President Michelle Bachelet. It's been an absolute pleasure for you joining us here in Washington, D.C.
Well, thank you till next time.
Indeed.
That was Chilean President Michelle Bachelet. Her first term in office was from 2006 to 2010. Then she began her second stint as president of Chile in March 2014.
Coming up.
A football club that bridges nations and brings social change.
Football can be an amazing excuse for making amazing things happen.
America's Now.
Welcome back to America's Now. Modern football was invented in England and spread rapidly around the globe. But perhaps no other country adopted it as faithfully as Argentina, where it has become a national obsession. Buenos Aires, for example, is a city with the largest number of football clubs in the world. This is a story about one Englishman's passion for one of Argentina's oldest football institutions. Henry May fell in love with the Huracan Football Club in Argentina. He founded its sister club in England and now uses the team as a way to help social projects everywhere. He is this week's game changer.
My name's Henry May. I'm the founder of Huracan FC London and the Huracan Foundation, and I believe football can be an amazing excuse for making amazing things happen. There are other teams in Argentina that do have fans with great passion, and Argentina's an amazing country for that. But when I came to Argentina and I saw Huracan and got to know Huracan fans and the Huracan community, I saw something different. I saw something that really made me connect and really made me fall in love with what I think is a really special club. The globo, which means balloon, is the symbol of Huracan. The badge actually comes from a guy called Jorge Newbery, who was the first guy to fly a hot air balloon over the Rio Plata, the River Plate between the river that separates Argentina and Uruguay, and Huracan was the name of his balloon. So for me, personally, when I see the balloon, I see a symbol that really means hope, it means freedom, it means change, it means new beginnings, it means adventure. So I think it's a great symbol that sums up a little bit of what our story has involved. Huracan enjoyed a very successful period in the 1920s, and that resulted in lots of people who lived in Buenos Aires and were fans of Huracan moving to different parts of the country or going to different parts of the world and setting up their own Huracan team.
Try and play a five-a-side pass, but on the whole it's been great. But now, this is it, this is when we're at our best. We're 1-0 up, let's just enjoy it, let's keep the ball off them and just completely play them apart. Literally every time anyone receives the ball, there's an easy...
About 6 guys in the team are teachers and have completed something called the Teach First programme in England. And for many of us, our biggest wins and our biggest successes as teachers came when we used sport and when we used football to try and teach our kids.
Huracan es un grupo de amigos y de familia. Globalizados por una pasión.
Huracan es aprender.
Huracan supports our education.
There are a number of organisations which are very good and very strong at using football specifically to teach specific things. There's a charity called Tackle Africa which teach HIV education to youngsters through football. And so football is used as a motivating factor to unite a number of the different factors that are going to improve their education.
Yes. Go backwards, go backwards. Inclusive la idea de la escuela.
Es una zona de gente de clase muy humilde, gente trabajadora, mucha gente de otros países. Acá por lo general en la villa hay gente de Paraguay, de Bolivia, de Perú, en donde la discriminación racial es muy común dentro del aula, hay que trabajar mucho eso, embarazo juvenil, chicos que trabajan.
Yo también. Y en 2010 era el año.
So we specifically target local projects that already exist, and what we do is we speak to them and we build up a project together and we develop a partnership. They or a group of their children take on the name of Huracan, for example Huracan FC Sierra Leone, Huracan FC Kenya, Huracan FC India. They take on the Huracan name, they share our story with their community, they tell the story of Huracan, and we share their story with the world. We fundraise for them, we do events for them, we help them with their coaching methods, we help them to attend school, we help them to do community projects. Whatever the local needs are of the different Huracan projects, we try our best to support those needs. Purposes of this trip is to understand the needs of people in Buenos Aires, of schools here, of Enseño por Argentina, the NGO that we're supporting here, and see how we can have more of an impact in Buenos Aires and with the Huracan community here. For us it's really important that our story isn't just Huracan London and lots of different Huracans around the world. We want to have an impact with Argentinians and in the Argentinian education system where there are massive needs and great disadvantage.
The Huracan Foundation is one of the more colorful stories behind Teach for All. It's an NGO that helps place thousands of teachers in over 35 countries around the world. The aim is to fast-track motivated young professionals into the labor market and improve basic access to education in at-risk communities. We'd love to have your input, so if you know someone who's helping change the world, drop us a line at an@cctv-america.com or tweet us at cctv_America and tell us about a game changer you would like to see on America's Now.
Coming up.
The downside of a popular beach town in Mexico.
With the underground system we have here, that's kind of what connects everything. The biodiversity, the reef, the people, the tourism is all connected through the water.
America's Now.
Welcome back. Tourist destinations can be like new restaurants. Word gets out, people create a buzz, and soon there are long lines to get in. On Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, you'll find the once sleepy beach village of Tulum. In a decade, it's gone from hammock heaven to the hottest spot in the sun, full of chic bungalow hotels. Business is booming, but some worry it could end up a victim of its own success. America's Now correspondent Jerry Haddon has more.
It's dawn, and Ciro Caché is combing Tulum's beach for empty beer cans. They're the day's first clue to the huge changes underway here.
Tulum está creciendo demasiado. Sí, porque cuando comenzó solo era un pueblito. Y ahora ya es una ciudad.
Staring out to sea, at least, Tulum seems the same tranquil place it's always been. But just follow Caché inland. Once upon a time, well, actually just 10 years ago, there was little development along Tulum's beach road. Just a handful of backpacker campgrounds, your room, a hammock, a tent, maybe a thatched roof hut. The luxury places, you could count them on 3 fingers. But now, Tulum has got that thing. The cool have found it, the cool with a capital C. Like some urban neighborhood or a new cocktail, Tulum is, in a word that makes hoteliers and investors smile, trendy.
My name is Kevin.
My name is Scott. My name is Chris. I live in Miami currently.
I'm from New York City.
New York City. See a lot of people from New York.
I heard about Tulum.
This is my 3rd time.
My roommate.
I am in Tulum right now on a first date.
She had been here before.
Well, a first date that just kind of got a little out of control and wound up in Tulum.
I decided to, on a whim, come down here for my birthday.
It's kind of chic. There's people kind of in the know here.
And best decision ever.
It's almost like I hate to say this, but a tropical Williamsburg.
People in the know arriving from Cancun Airport to the north on a new highway replacing the old 2-laner, past places that look straight out of Vegas. The sounds of nightlife here are no longer birds and insects.
Cuéntame de los cambios que has visto. Cuando llegaste estaba más virgen, más salvaje, más tranquilo.
Pues sí, virgen. Virgen, mira, te lo digo así de fácil. Aquí, en esta parte, así como ves, no existía esto. Era una casa normal, ¿no? Así como de que yo vivía, de hecho, en la casa de al lado, y luego en una palapa de atrás no había paredes, solamente los mosquiteros. Y ahora pues no encuentras nada de eso, ¿no? Ahorita encuentras una planta de luz del lugar que está trabajando aquí al lado.
There didn't used to be electricity out here at all. The recent boom in hotel building has outstripped what capacity there is. That sense of frontier tourism, of needing candles should the lights go out, is part of Tulum's charm.
We were just looking for something nearby, and I think that this just stood out to us as a place that could be different and more of an adventure
than other
places.
Or the same kind of style, like smaller little like hut-type places, sort of like
more boutique.
Boutique, but for how much longer?
I saw a wedding the other day on the beach. We're right now in the middle of turtle season, and they had a beam light to the water and loud music. Some years ago, that was just unheard of. Everybody was so protective of the beach, and you couldn't have light or loud noises on turtle season.
When does the jungle become too cool? In fact, the cool coast, stretching from Tulum north to Akumal, wouldn't even have arisen had it not been for a couple of sisters who visited in 2005. Wilma, then Emily. The Category 5 hurricanes dumped and blew, laying waste to the little stick huts along the coast.
There's like 10 of us in town during Wilma, and we were just walking around, just watching one thing after another, just getting wiped out. And that was Thursday night, and then we were holed up all day Friday, all day Saturday. Sunday we kind of was able to get out, but not really. And then we showed up here, and then we opened on Monday. Everything oceanfront was destroyed.
Do you worry that your little oasis here could be disturbed?
Oh, definitely. It already has been. The problem what you have here is it's easier to pay for forgiveness than to ask permission. Like, perfect example is what's going on right here with the Secrets Hotel. You know, we have a 400-bedroom hotel. They've resold a bunch of the mangroves and Luna Galactus were behind us here that was all never supposed to be sold. We've just been sold, and they're talking about developing it.
A coastline wiped clean by storm became a chance not to just rebuild what there was, but to do it even bigger. The new hotel sits right on Akumal's Turtle Beach. The tourism here keeps local tour guide Melchior Gamboa busy, but also up at night, worrying.
Oye, pero esto es macizo. Hace 10 años no había tanta gente aquí mirando.
Sí, hace 10 años no había tanta gente. Acá en un día bueno, soleado, vacaciones, hasta 5,000 personas al día.
¿Cómo ves el futuro de la tortuga aquí?
Pues lo veo muy crítico. Si no hay responsabilidad de parte del gobierno, de las asociaciones, de las dependencias que deben de cuidar esto, se va a perder todo.
Beginning with the turtles themselves, there are roughly 50 of them who feed and spawn here. But how long would you hang around, accosted by daily swarms of overhead snorkelers, big spastic bubble makers who block your sun? As head of an Akumal tourism cooperative, Gamboa worries about the turtles. He and most locals live in the other half of Akumal, across a bridge on the far side of the highway from the beach. Few tourists make it over here. Gamboa says the big hotel owners at the beach want to fence his people out.
Por caminar 40 metros de la carretera a la playa, tendríamos que pagar 300 pesos por persona. Entonces eso es lo que dificulta.
Esto quita el beneficio del negocio.
Exactamente.
The hoteliers say they're the ones trying to protect the turtles by restricting tours. However it may be, revenues from all that tourism don't seem to reach the village here. But local governments say villages like Akumal are growing faster than they can pay for asphalt, new streetlights, and sewers.
¿Sabes cuándo vienen a hacer limpieza, a reparar focos, a limpiar un poquito la avenida? Una semana, 2 semanas antes de cada elección.
Gamboa's hope is to prevent another kind of growth, of an entrenched ring of local poverty around the tourist areas, the kind of misery that encircles Cancun or Acapulco, before it's too late. His idea is simple. Let everybody win. The locals, the big hotels, the tourists, the turtles. If not, everyone could lose. The tourism pressure has reached beyond the beaches to the inland cenotes, the peninsula's unique water holes that dot the region. They are the source of fresh water for animals, from birds to jaguars, and they're a hell of a lot of fun for people too. How can you not jump into these things? The problem is the cenotes are all connected. Beneath the surface flows a single aquifer. Paul Sanchez has dedicated years to raising awareness of this fragile system.
All this water is the same underneath. It's in the same aquifer. So if everyone's jumping in here with suntan lotion on or using it as a restroom, that means those pollutants are getting spread everywhere.
Once again, there aren't enough studies to make definitive statements on that, but you can figure 600 people, 1,000 people a day jumping into here with sweat and suntan lotion, and let's say some may go to the bathroom in the cenote. Then you do have an impact that we haven't measured yet, and it impacts mostly the fish in the cenote, but also the quality of the water. Then that water's not treated for those things. And so this same water, you saw hotels on the other side of the highway, this same water is coming out in the showers, for example, on the other side. All that's sort of mixed. With the underground system we have here, that's kind of what connects everything. The biodiversity, the reef, the people, the tourism, it's all connected through the water.
Cenotes are everywhere, on public lands, on private. Sanchez says there's no master plan for their protection, which explains why one is pristine, the other like a theme park.
If we can sit down and talk about management with the authorities, with how it's reviewed, how the place is developed, you could probably protect the cenotes for the wildlife and also have areas where you have tourism, because it's a fantastic place to enjoy clear fresh water on a hot summer day.
So the idea isn't that people don't get to visit these places,
No.
It's finding a balance.
Exactly.
A balance that ultimately must favor the environment, because when this dirty water reaches the sea, it contributes to this: algae, seagrass. It's food for turtles, but it's also a sign of oxygen-starved waters, of high levels of acidity caused by man-made pollutants. At the big hotels, tractors rake it up and burn it daily, but elsewhere, it's formed a stinky, gunky blockade stretching for miles on end. South of Tulum begins the Sian Khan Biosphere, a huge protected reserve of jungle, mangroves, coastline. But pollutants don't obey such designations, observes Jose Suarez, a fisherman in the tiny village of Punta Allen, a 2-hour drive from Tulum. Suarez and his pals are alarmed. They know they can't stop the seaweed or its effects on their small-time tourism, but they might just be able to save what they've lived on for generations: lobsters. These guys do lobsters right. First off, they don't trap them. They offer them shade and shelter under these steel slabs. The lobsters are free to come and go. During the day, they stay put. Catching them is this easy. It's a brilliant idea, at least for these waters. The only occasional problem: dolphins will sometimes flip the traps in search of crunchy snacks. But they're easy to flip back. With the catch on board, Suarez does something relatively new. He throws back the juveniles and the pregnant ones. This despite the growing demand from the new eateries up the coast and overseas.
Ves el oro al fondo del mar y lo dejas, un poco raro.
No, este oro crece, el oro crece, se reproduce, sigue la mata dando, como dicen, sigue. Entonces, si nosotros lo cuidamos, más da. Es como regarla.
Suarez, it would seem, is onto something that might help save the entire Yucatan from the nearly irresistible call to cash in on tourism: thinking sustainably. Back in Tulum, sustainable means realizing there's room for both hipster and hippie. At least that's what yoga teacher Loarna tries to impart during her beachside classes at a swank hotel.
Everyone's on the beach and it's just one unifying place.
And it's okay that there are all those things.
Totally.
Rich resorts, backpacker places, cheap restaurants, celebrity chefs.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, it really is. It really is, because these are all the facets of our societies. There's no point in saying one's better than the other. It's just where everyone's at and what everyone's exploring.
Loarna teaches at a high-end joint, but lives at a budget campground, like this one, where budget traveler Matt Lesser stays. Lesser's a Reiki healer from Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Show me where paradise is.
This is it.
This is
my
it.
home away from
This
home.
is your REI tent.
And then also, it's great because I can do the leather work right there. So I just sort of sit down and this is my office.
Fantastic. What a far cry from the brick and asphalt of Brooklyn.
Yeah. I found it actually by accident and we just fell in love with it. And we met all these people at the same place and they were just these loving people from Canada and all over the world. And we just had this sort of big supper and just felt like I had found my true family. I was closer to those people in that 1 week than I am to my real family.
Lesser fled Williamsburg, he says, because his hood was getting too commercialized. Cool had killed authenticity, only to be sacrificed on the altar of fast food.
I needed to get away from the whole sort of lifestyle, like the crazy energy of New York, so I came here because I wanted sort of a low-key, beautiful, like loving vibe.
Clearly, the same changes are happening here. For some, it may mean time to move on. or a chance to cash in. For others, it's part of the natural cycle of tourism. The pristine is discovered and changes forever.
According to the Mexican Tourism Board, 2014 was a record-breaking year for international tourism, with 14 million tourists visiting the country from abroad. More than half of them were from the United States. Finally, in addition to music, another window into a country's culture is through the people who help keep its customs alive. Its native indigenous community. The Indigenous Peoples Games is a competition that celebrates the athletic traditions of the country's ancestors. It's held in Brazil every 2 years. We leave you now with some bold, bright images of the Indigenous Games. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again next week for another edition of America's Now.
A expectativa é celebrar a união entre os povos, trazer a vitalidade da cultura indígena ao mundo, ao Brasil, e mostrar que realmente a gente tem autenticidade, que tem uma diversidade muito grande, que precisa ser visto, com um olhar